the whole tether explanation, and this is where I get to do my thing and have fun and overanalyze the shit out of everything, is fucking ridiculous. Like, when you think about it logically, this is the most ridiculous premise ever. Like, just completely insane. And that's why I said at the beginning to put a pin in that whole beginning text that there's thousands of miles of tunnels under the continental US and everything, and that, because that is establishing that this is the world that this film is taking place in, that this is the rules, and there's nothing supernatural. Like, if they came out at the end and said like the tethers were from a different dimension or something and came to, you know, take over the world and everything, then you wouldn't have to adhere to logic in any way. But since he put that in there, you kind of have to adhere to some logic, and that's where it all falls apart for me. Like, the entrance to this tether world is in a carnival attraction. Nobody has noticed the entrance down there in all these years. Nobody, like maintenance people who work on the attractions in the carnival, no one's ever stumbled upon this place. Like, ever. I find that so hard to believe. And it's right by the ocean. This whole underground area and stuff under Vision Quest is literally like right across a little bit of beach from the ocean. So the ocean, they've never had a fucking flood or anything down there. Like, that's the only way I can think that if it did happen, that's the only way I can think of them getting water, because they don't mention that shit at all. So that makes no sense. They're saying in the continental US with all these tunnels, so let's just stick with the United States. There's 330 million people living in the United States, a little more than that, around there, 330 million living in the US today. There is no way that you're fitting 330 million tethers, clones, into thousands of miles of tunnel and mine shafts that are abandoned or whatever, what have you. Just never gonna happen. Like, never. Like, absolutely ridiculous that that's even a thing at all. Like, that the whole tunnel thing with thousands of miles of tunnels, and they say, because Red says that they've been doing this for generations. So that's generations, let's call it, I don't know, like 50 years to be generous, but let's go like 100 years, because a few generations, 100 years, a century sounds good. In all those and then they said that the people who made them, which if this is 100 years ago and stuff, where'd they get the technology to clone all these people and to clone 330 million fucking people? Nowhere. That's where they absolutely had no technology to do this, unless it was like, we'll suspend disbelief as much as we can, that it was just like they had advanced fucking technology that they kept hidden from the public, that the government or whatever secret organization set up this whole tether thing. Then once they realized that they were soulless and that they failed with their whole cloning thing, they gave up on them and left them down there for generations. So they abandoned this whole idea, and the tethers were down there to fend for themselves for generations. There's no way that all of them are fitting down there, first of all. That's absolutely insane. Do you know how many people have died just in the last century? Like, over 5 billion people. Who's cleaning up all the bodies? Who's cleaning up and moving 5 billion dead corpses from these tunnels and shit? And confined spaces that you wouldn't even be able to fit all the live people in, let alone 5 billion dead bodies that are fucking dropping dead throughout the century. In I don't care if they weren't tunnels, if it was just the entire fucking underground of the entire United States. You're still not fitting all that in there. Like, absolutely not. Then, like I said, who cleaned all the bodies up? And if they're tethered to those above, we see them like moving around and stuff, and they're copying the movements of the people in the world above. Like with them on the roller coaster, and we see them underground, like pretending they're on a roller coaster and on like the spinning ride and stuff like that. How are they moving around, like when they're in tunnels down there and we see some of the structure, like when Adelaide goes down there to get Jason from Red? Yeah, they're nice looking and stuff, like a nice little facility, but this is thousands of miles of tunnels we're talking about that we're told in the beginning. How are they moving around and following their tethers around when, like, everything is so fucking vastly different, like down there compared to up in the world? Like, that makes no sense. Like, and the fact that how can they even move? Because there's 330 million of them down there. That absolutely makes no sense at all. Like, at all. And we'll just keep on going here. We know they have kids, right? Because in Red's opening little monologue at the house, when they break into the house and everything, she says that, that she gave birth to a monster or whatever, and gave birth, so they can have kids. We know that. So that we accept. What about the hundreds of millions of people who fuck all the time and use condoms? Do they have billions of condoms down in the Tether region? Like, so if people are fucking up here with condoms and they have none down there, do they have a child, the Tethers? Then who's that child tethered to? There's no child above, so that doesn't fucking compute in any fucking way. What about fucking miscarriages? What if people have, they get pregnant, the Tethers get pregnant also, then they have a miscarriage above? Does that mean that they have a miscarriage below, or do they also have the kid to fruition? Then there's no tether, like there's the tether, but there's no human being that it's tethered to. I don't know. You give me the answers. And what about adoption? Like, what about people who adopt? Like, yeah, that person already has a tether, as from what we're told, that basically everyone who exists above ground has a tether below ground. So if somebody's adopted, if a kid's adopted, it makes sense because he has a tether down there. But how does the family down in the tether world get to that adopted kid with 330 million people, with 5 billion dead bodies all over the place? Like, come on, really? Like, some of this is so fucking stupid. Like, and it brings the film down for me, like, a lot. And it's a shame because this is such an excellent film. And like I said, it has some of the best metaphors and symbolism that I've seen in a movie, and I don't even, like I said, I can't even tell you how long. So masterfully done. But then we get all this, which is just ridiculous. And then they eat rabbits. They eat raw rabbits. Do you know how many rabbits it would take to feed 330 million tethers? Like, let's just be generous and say that they eat 2 rabbits a day. Let's be even more generous and say 1 rabbit a day. That's 330 something million rabbits a day. Do you know how many rabbits are in the whole world, not even just the US? I looked it up, so I'll tell you. There's 709 million rabbits, domesticated rabbits. So let's bump it up to 1 billion. At 1 rabbit a day, 330 million tethers. Within 4 or 5 days, there's no more rabbits in the world. They can't eat anything after that. And then who's delivering all these rabbits? Who's getting 709 million rabbits and delivering it down there when they gave up on this project generations ago? I don't know. Makes fucking no sense at all, man. And then where'd they get millions and millions, hundreds of millions of identical golden scissors? I go to fucking Walmart, you'd be lucky to find like 10 scissors that are identical. Like, it's so ridiculous, man. Like, it's fucking insane. How did Red get past a 6-year-old education? Like, she was 6 years old. She could talk, yeah, and she can understand certain things. Like, she was 6 years old. She's not fucking like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. But how is she able to progress past the education a 6-year-old would have? I don't know. How did she communicate her plan and stuff to 300 plus million people, tethers, that are down there, when they can't even fucking talk, any of them? She's the only one who could talk. None of them could speak. They're dumb as stumps. So, like, none of this makes sense at all when you break it down like this, like, logically. And yeah, of course, it's a movie and it's a film and stuff, but, like, the whole point of what I said is that they established at the beginning, like, that this is in some sort of reality. That this isn't like a supernatural thing, or like I said, that could have been like an alternate dimension these tethers are coming from and taking over and stuff like that. And then none of this would even be brought up because there's no rules really. But because it's set in reality and they try to explain that, it just falls apart in every fucking way imaginable. Like, there's no way you can make sense of any of that story that Red said. How does Red even know the history of this plan? That the scientists or whoever the fuck that made all these tethers and stuff, how does she even know any of that? She's 6 years old when she was switched down there. So she didn't even live down there for 6 years like Red did and stuff. Adelaide, when she got switched and went down there, she was brand new. So who told her any of this when none of them can talk? Like, alright, I'm done with the whole situation because it's so fucking ridiculous. But all in all, excellent movie.